Hey Gary, Professor Anton may have a point here because, the way you're advocating that suffering counts and pleasure doesn't, then, just having no feelings would automatically be better than having feelings. And that's the problem. We know that people that have deadened feelings do crazy things. They hurt themselves sometimes just so they can feel. But then again, that's all sort of history, right? Because you agreed that by my description, and focusing on the fact that we can have personal misery that we can discount, our own miseries, but we can't discount other people's miseries for them. You admitted that if we focused on this kind of problem, that we could have maybe something just barely above the surface. Something slightly positive. So I think Professor Anton's missing the point I was missing, which is not to say you're correct entirely. It's just to say neither you're correct or incorrect. But what are you trying to say? What are you concerned with? And it's evident in your rejoinder to Professor Anton that you say he should be the one to suffer. You don't really deny that an individual person could discount their own suffering or have suffering that led to joy, as I had said, have said, as Professor Anton is saying. What concerns you is that we get our joy and put the misery on somebody else, and that can't be discounted. And I feel pretty certain that Professor Anton admits and acknowledges that that is not okay. That we need to seek pleasures that don't cause material problems for other people. And I mean, with this perspective, I even see where you're coming from with virtual reality. Again, I don't fully agree because see, the thing is, yeah, I've been playing this video game, a first-person shooter, so it's all action, blow 'em up. It's a free one. That's not something that's not an urge or an activity I want to satisfy in real life. You running around chasing people down and stuff. I want to do that in a virtual reality. Fine. So those kinds of pleasures, I agree. A virtual reality is a possible way to express them. It can still be unhealthy. So I don't endorse the extreme version where somebody that wants to be a brutal dictator. Um, if they're going to be obsessed about it. On the other hand, if they're just going to play a little game of Tropico, go for it. So fine. The thing there where we disagree still, though, is that I don't want to have to totally go into a virtual reality because I don't believe that all of my pleasures cause material suffering, and I can tell which is which, and I don't want to cause the material suffering, so I will be responsible enough to know which pleasures I have to get through cathartic fantasy that's abstract as to not inflict, for example, war on the world just because I like running around, um, you know, exercising the same mental faculties that I might otherwise exercise in an actual war. But Professor Anton does have a good point here as far as are you really advocating deadened feelings? Because even if you are, it raises an interesting question, right? An interesting dynamic to a question in which, most, I would say, common sense approach, which by the way is, an insult to it, but a common, it has to be answered just because it is so common. Not that we should lend it weight because it's common, but, a common perspective on this that should be answered, you know, um, is that people want to feel. They'd rather feel misery than nothing at all. That we do have a preference, and I'd like to sum it up with this basic thing. We're not comparing. I see where he's coming from, thinking you have a high standard. I've said the same thing, that you expect the world to be good, perhaps like we were told, and it's not, so you're comparing it to that. I think you have to compare our life to something else in order to judge it, and what we should compare it to is just chemicals bouncing around. What's the point of that? Even less than if somebody can somehow grab a little bit of enjoyment out of the chemical dances. So, if you compare it to the same universe, the same pointlessness, but no life, how could that be better? You said that life is an objective thing to value, so, how would it be better if it didn't exist at all? All right. Cheers.